Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. New schedule's up in the channel description, and the production I'm in is finally out of rehearsal, so I can commit to it. We're kicking things off with a deck focused around one of, if not the only, cool toys we got in the new legendary decks, the Phantom Knights Link monster, Rusty Bardiche. This card is absolutely bonkers and enables a super consistent Sky Striker cosplay of a deck that pairs well with everyone's favorite high-rarity TCG archetype. Presenting PK Rusty Bardiche Danger. So here's the list, and usually I make a joke here about awful ratios or something, but this seems pretty normal. Odd. Anyway, I'll give you a little bit of background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, this entire deck is just an excuse to play the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. Old Rusty feels a lot like what I wish all Link monsters were. Generic, but not too generic, enablers for an entire strategy, super synergistic with their own associated monsters, and most importantly, completely impossible to Link climb with. During your main phase, he says you can send a Phantom Knights monster from your deck to the graveyard to set a Phantom Knights spell or trap directly from your deck, and since most of the Phantom Knights cards have busted graveyard effects, you can afterwards find another one with a little bit of help from Silent Boots. Basically, the deck is a hyper-consistent setup engine for a single Link monster that searches you a couple of monster negates, which, if the current format is any indication, is more than enough to win the game. The upside to playing this over something like Sky Striker is that your longer game is much better as well. With multiple Fog Blades, it's surprisingly easy to recur Bardiche should the unthinkable happen and he die, and with careful use of the cards you bin, you can all but guarantee you're going to be able to make a Break Sword next turn. This turns on Bardiche's second effect, a single card pop when a Dark Xyz monster appears at his Link point. With these two abilities and effect negation at an all-time high, it should be a cinch to pick up wins with this strategy, especially since Wee Witch, Bardiche, and Breaksword, an incredibly easy board to make, caps out at exactly 8,000 points of damage. Which brings me to the second half of the deck, the dangers. So Bardiche isn't particularly needy as a Link monster, he only demands dark materials. Dangers are incredible at barfing out quick and easy Link material, so we can probably get away with only playing the good ones. The downside of hand destruction isn't a big deal either, binning an Errant Phantom Knight is probably in our best interests as well. Alongside dangers, we're playing a small striker engine for easy access to 2 dark material via Space Insulator, which should be enough to guarantee we get what we want. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First, we've got our dangers, 3 copies of Nessie, 3 Chupacabra, 3 Chubby Sneck, and 3 Jackalope. After that, we've got our Phantom Knights, 3 Ragged Gloves, 3 Ancient Cloak, 3 Silent Boots. God, I wish there was one other good Phantom Knight. For spells, we've got 2 Desires, 2 Called, 3 Engage, 1 Widow Anchor, 1 Hornet Drones, 1 Foolish, 1 Rhoda, and 1 Monster Reborn. For traps, we're on 3 Infip, since hand traps are kind of questionable in danger, 3 Fogblade, and a Shade for an extra target and routine material. In the extra, we've got a Big Eye for a Dark 7, Rebellion for a Breaksword Float, Breaksword, Stone King Darius, and Gossip Shadow as our 3s, followed by Boral Sword, Rusty himself, Nightmare's Unicorn, Phoenix, and Cerberus, Wee Witch, Insulator, Hayate, Kagari, and Linkuriboh. So with that, let's jump into the games. Before I show you replays with actual interaction in them, however, the horror. I'm first going to show you what an optimal turn 1 board setup looks like. We've opened quite well here. 2 copies of Phantom Knights is exactly what we want to see. Even though they're the same one, Silent Boots can of course special summon itself off of another Silent Boots. Brandish Startup Engage is the absolute best thing we can see in any opener, and even though we've opened one of our Fog Blades, it's not exactly a Garnet. Here it just represents an additional negate we'll have. Because we've opened so well, we're going to use this Startup Engage to get a Hornet Drones, go into Kagari, and instead of adding the Hornet Drones back, we'll add back the Engage. We're then going to normal summon a Silent Boots, special summon a second one, go into Insulator, go into Rusty Bardiche, then use its effect setting an Ancient Cloak for a Fog Blade, banishing a Silent Boots for a second Fog Blade, banishing the Ancient Cloak for a Ragged Boots, getting a Widow Anchor, setting 3, and passing with 4 negates up. Our opponent's going to activate Swords of Revealing Light and set 1, passing it back to us. We should be able to kill them from this position. We're going to use Rusty Bardiche for Ancient Cloak and our remaining trap again. We'll go ahead and get a Silent Boots, then use Ragged Gloves and Silent Boots to go into Breaksword. That's going to be at 3,000. Our Bardiche is going to destroy that set card, then we'll flip up Fog Blade on our Bardiche, destroy it, and Swords of Revealing Light. Banish Fog Blade so there's no traps in our graveyard, and we can activate Shade Brigandine and go into Witchling. That's going to give us exactly 8,000 points of damage with 1,000 extra off of Ragged Gloves. So, now that you're familiar with the gameplay, and it's time to see the deck in action. Our opponent is playing Blue Eyes Chaos Max Turbo, an extremely frightening deck because Ebly is still legal, and oh boy did the Devi Rituals ever give this thing a boost. We're going first, which is good for us, and unfortunately good for our opponent as well. Hopefully we can survive until our next turn. We've also drawn Hornet Bit, which is excellent. We'll go ahead and fire that off to get ourselves a token, go into Kagari, get a second token. We're 2/3 of the way to Bardiche. Afterwards we can normal summon a copy of Ancient Cloak, go into Space Insulator, use Ancient Cloak to get a copy of Silent Boots to hand, and go into Rusty himself. We'll go ahead and send another Silent Boots to get a Fog Blade to our hand and to our side of the field, set it alongside an Infinite Impermanence, and pass it back to our opponent. They'll start with a copy of Deadly Ritual Talismandra. They'll activate the effect of Kandal, we'll negate it. They'll respond by Chaos Forming, and oh, that is the wrong zone. Yikes. They'll pass it back to us, and we should be able to win from this position. We'll start by normal summoning a copy of Ancient Cloak, specialing a Silent Boots, using Nessie's effect, getting it on board, going into a Break Sword, using Bardiche's effect to destroy one of their cards, and, the Break Sword himself to destroy the other. We'll then banish Fogblade from graveyard to go into Wee Witch, but unfortunately, because we don't have a Ragged Gloves under our Break Sword, we're 1,000 off lethal. Unfortunately, that 1,000 could be all the damage in the world against the one, the only Chaos Max Turbo. We're going to Called by the Grave their Talismandra in response to their hand activation. They'll have to trade in their Blue Eyes, and they find Melody, but unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. They're just going to set a copy of Whitestone of Legends and pass it back to us. We'll pop it with Break Sword and then get in for lethal damage. Our second round match is up against Rank... Sorry everyone, I'm physically allergic to that joke. They're on trains. Unfortunately for us, they're also on Cyber Dragon. That's bad news because our game plan involves sitting on a Link monster and hoping for the best. We also haven't drawn any of our Phantom Knights this game, but that should be fine because we have access to Engage and a whole lot of dangers. We're going to start by firing Offset Engage. That's going to get us a Hornet Bit. We'll fire that off as well, getting ourselves a Kagari and adding back the Engage because, of course, we have enough in our hand that we can just get a Widow Anchor. We'll go ahead and use Jackalope. We do get it, so we get a Nessie to our side of the board. We'll use Chupacabra, and unfortunately, our opponent makes us discard in such a way that we have too many things in our board and we have to artificially use Insulator as a 1 so we can clear our board and keep this copy of Widow Anchor on. We have 3 negates set, but unfortunately none of those deal with Cyber Dragon. Our opponent's going to go into a Mega Fleet, then get themselves a copy of Flying Pegasus. That's going to bring back the Runaway Railcar. They'll attack for 2,400, but thankfully the thing I want to negate is the Pegasus anyway. In main phase 2, they'll go into a Genius, set 1, and use Railcar's effect for a Darricane. We draw into an Ancient Cloak. That's a fantastic draw. We'll start by reborning Bardiche, then we'll normal summon Ancient Cloak, special summon Silent Boots, go into Break Sword, triggering Bardiche to hit this set card. It's Urgent Schedule. We'll then use Break Sword to destroy this copy of Pegasus, Ancient Cloak to get a copy of Brigadine to our hand, and then we'll use Bardiche's effect to get ourselves a copy of Fogblade to our side of the field. We'll go ahead and link up into a copy of Apprentice Witchling before attacking over Genius for 100, directly for 25, and directly for 26. It's not lethal, but it's close. Our opponent draws into another stinking train. They'll go ahead and discard Soul Charge, normal summon a Night Express Knight, go into Darricane, go into Bullet Liner, go into Dora. Now when they attack, we'll go ahead and flip up a copy of Fogblade. They'll respond with Dora's effect, of course, and of course we have a second Fogblade set as well, so we'll activate that. This is going to force them post-combat to go into the new big boss, but thankfully it doesn't do anything on our turn. We're going to start by activating the effect of Phantom Knights of Break Sword, destroying said big boss, then using Fogblade to bring back Silent Boots, going into a Nightmare Cerberus so we can pop this last remaining card, and getting in for lethal amounts of damage. Alright, so it's time for Game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent is on Gumblar Hero, and god, I am already sick of this deck. Unfortunately for them, they've opened quite poorly. They are going first, which is an atrocity, but they have found 3 copies of effectively the same card. They also have a Polymerization, a Garnet in a 60-card deck, and Divine Sword Phoenix Blade has made an appearance as well. Additionally, we have a copy of Infinite Impermanence in our opener, the only hand trap we're playing. They're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Armageddon Knight. We will prevent Malicious from going to the graveyard. Unfortunately, they can Polymerization 2 monsters out of their hand for an Adoration and still make Isolde. Isolde is going to get an Ancient Cloak, then send 4 for a copy of the one, the only Shadow Mist, whose effect will get them a copy of Mask Change. They'll equip the Isolde with a Phoenix Blade, set a Mask Change, and pass it back to us. We're going to start by activating Brandish Startup Engage. They're going to Mask Change in response. Of course, going into Darklaw, Startup Engage is going to get us a Widow Anchor, and when they activate the effect of Darklaw, we can negate it with Widow Anchor. So now we can play the game as it was intended. That's great news for us because we can easily chew through this board. We're going to use Chisunko a couple of times to get a couple of them to the board, then Nessie to get another card to our hand. We're going to use Chupacabra again, and wow, 5 materials. We're going to go into a Rusty Bardiche. That's going to get us, of course, Fogblade and a Break Sword on the same board. That's going to trigger Bardiche's effect and destroy this copy of Darklaw. We'll still be able to destroy our set copy of Fogblade as well. Ancient Cloak's going to get us a copy of Brigadine before we get in for 21 and 2000. From this point on, I maybe play the game a little bit safe because it was such an overwhelming defeat just then. They normal summon an Armageddon Knight, that's number 4. We're going to Fog Blade it, that's great news for us. They'll use Phoenix Blade to get it back to the hand, set 1, and pass. I know it's Phoenix Blade, but I do want to style a little bit. We'll activate Break Sword to destroy our Fog Blade and then get in. We could have pushed for lethal probably, but I figured maybe he has an Octastretch or something. There's no other thing that could be in his opener. He's then going to activate Phoenix Blade, normal summon a Vion, use Vion's effect. We will designate one of the remaining Vions. They will mask change in response, but thankfully this will still negate the effect of Vion, so we don't have to deal with Malicious. We now just have to deal with a Dark Law. They're going to get over our Bardiche, but this shouldn't be a problem. We still have a copy of Brigadine's set, so we'll flip that sucker up, and then we'll link summon a copy of Witchling, use Hornet Bit to get a token to our side of the board, which will become a Hayate and get in for the remaining 1200 points of damage. Alright, so it's time for game 2, and unfortunately for our opponent, while they are on the play, their ability to draw has not gotten any better. Yikes, this is a lot of stuff that does mostly nothing. If we chew through one Fog Blade, we should be in the clear. They're going to set a copy of Silent Boots and 2 spells and traps before passing it back to us. We're going to start by activating Brandish Startup Engage to get ourselves a copy of Hornet Bit. They'll Droll, but we can play through Droll extremely easily. We'll go into Kagari, use its effect, and there's the Fog Blade. That's fine with us because the rest of our hand specials itself. We'll normal summon a Ragged Gloves, go into Silent Boots, go into Space Insulator, and go into Bardiche. Bardiche is going to get ourselves a copy of Fog Blade. Then we'll use Nessie. We use Jackalope to get another Nessie, and what do you know? Big Eye triggers Bardiche's effect, which means that we'll be able to proc artificially this Twin Twister, then take the last remaining card on their side of the field. We'll pass it back to our opponent, and what do they draw but Contacting the Sea? Wow, there's a sideboard option if I've ever seen it. It's pretty good against Bardiche, but not great when we already have an established board. We'll go ahead and go into Ragged Gloves. They'll give us Contacting. I'll go into Phoenix, and they'll concede. So we're back with the deck, and it's actually pretty good. Firstly, Monster Negation is at an all-time high. When you're routinely faced with Negate my Armageddon Knight or die, suddenly Fog Blade looks pretty tasty. Secondly, it plays well with already powerful cards. Access to a Sky Striker suite is nothing to laugh at. And thirdly, you're definitely going to catch people off guard. No one is going to expect a Mermail-looking 8000 exactly board to cheese them out on turn 2. Unfortunately, this deck also has a lot of negatives going for it. Firstly, it's easy to hate out. Cherrying the Bardiche means you're now just playing a bad version of Gumblar Hero, though it's still probably worth devoting space in the extra to Gumblar for a potential pivot. 2, it's good at grinding, but likely outclassed by Afterburner decks. And thirdly, it's expensive. It's got the Cross format Infernoid problem, where it's about twice the cost of the best deck in the format, so it's going to receive exactly 0 innovation or attention in paper. Despite all this, I think this deck is tight. I would like nothing more than to see this strategy succeed, but it'll probably require Goki to get a little bit better before this decidedly meta-oriented call holds water. So that's that. I look forward to diving into the 45 million Link monsters that were released during my 1-week absence soon. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday from 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. And if you have an idea for a deck or archetype you want to see me play on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comments section below and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.